Hello everybody, Top Hat Dooge here. Today we're going to be making a Goose in Counter-Strike CSGO SDK Source Hammer. Now, the first thing you want to do is grab the sphere tool, and we're going to make a spheroid that's going to be the body of the Goose. Now, you can always, I'm just doing this to show you how to sort of make it, use the shapes, but you can do any scale you want, whatever you want to do, that's fine. I've gone with the default, amount of polygons on the sphere to avoid any errors with the model, but you can do whatever you want to do in terms of how many vertices are on the sphere, how many vertices are on all the cylinders that we use and stuff, but that's beside the point. I'm just showing you the method, not really the exact measurements of the Goose. Now you can see here we made the neck out of a cylinder. Again, everything the default cylinder roundness, and we're gonna make a second spheroid for the head. Now I'm gonna speed this bit up a bit because I do take forever to make a Goose because I'm not exactly the CS:GO SDK Hammer master. But if you've been mapping for a long time, then you can make this Goose in like 5 minutes. Now that we got all the bodywork out of the way of the Goose, I'm going to move on to texturing. Now, I'm going to use Dev Orange for the bill and the feet, and I'm going to use Dev Reflect 80 for the rest of the body. Now, the reason I'm using Dev Reflect 80 and not 90 is just because 90 is too bright, and if you have extremely bright HDR like on Vertigo, then you won't even be able to see the Goose. Whenever I actually load this up in game later on, you'll see even 80 is a bit too bright. Maybe I wanted to use 70 or even 60 for the Goose, or maybe even make my own texture. If you guys are doing this and you want to make a proper Goose and make it into a prop in game, then you might want to make your own texture for it with feathers and all. But I'm just showing you for the purposes of the video the shape and the overall idea of making a Goose or a Goose-like object in CSGO Source SDK Hammer. Now that we got all of the texturing out of the way, we're gonna put some decals on it, and by some I mean just some eyes. And I've chosen the bullet hole. You know, it's comedic effect. You know, it's kind of a funny texture to put on a Goose. We didn't shoot his eyes out. That's just what his eyes are. Now, I did make a mistake when I did this. While I did select all the faces for the overlay to apply to, CSGO Hammer had a bit of a visual bug where it looked like the overlay wasn't applying the left eye. So I ended up making the right eye not apply as well, so it looked like an angry Goose, but it ended up just looking like the thinking emoji. Now, you know, it's expected for Hammer to have some visual bugs, so if you are ever making something in Hammer and it looks different in game, then that's 100% expected, and it's not really much to worry about. You just have to do a workaround for it and find out what the compiler is actually thinking what you're doing whenever you have these things in Hammer. Now, what you just saw me do right there was hide all the body parts that I didn't want to be smoothed together, because I forgot that you can just select all the brushes that you want to be smoothed. But what you want to do is select all the brushes that you want to be smooth, or faces if it's a more complex shape. And in the bottom right corner of the face edit sheet, there is a smoothing groups option, and it goes to like 1 to 24 or something like that. And there's nothing different with them. They're all the same, but it's basically so you can separate it So if two things are touching and you want them both to be smooth separately, then you can put one in smoothing group 1 and the other in smoothing group 2. There's a lot of excess. I don't think you'll ever find yourself needing to use all 24. I only need to use like maybe 3 or 4 in my maps. But you can see here there's the camera option in the top left. You can change that to smoothing groups, and you can check your smoothing groups by clicking the different buttons. And I forgot to smooth the wings here. That's why I'm going over them again and putting them on smoothing group 3, separate from the body and the legs and the feet and all that. And now we want to compile our goose into game. Now, to do this, we can either create a box around the goose of skybox and hollow it out, or we can create a cordon. The cordon is more of a temporary fix. If you ever need to render only a certain part of your map, you can press the create cordon button, name it, and the enable cordon is to the left of that, up at the top. You can see me click it in the video. And we're going to create a counter terrace so I can spawn in, because I'm not a terrorist, you know. And a light environment, which is going to light up the level and you know, add lighting to our goose so we can actually see the smoothing groups that we've put on it and see how it looks in game. Now, a light level I usually like to use is about 600. You can have a little bit less if it's moody outside, or a little bit more if it's extra bright outside, but 600 is a sort of a good starting point. And make it just sort of a little bit yellow. It's not a science, really. Just go to the yellow area and make it a little bit yellow. And then for the ambient, this is for all the shadows and stuff. This is sort of like, no matter where you are, this glow happens. Go about 200 to start off with. Again, if you want more contrast or less contrast in the level, you can change that. And just sort of like a random blue color. Now that we're inside of game, you can see the smoothing groups that I applied didn't exactly work. I think this is because of the intersecting brushes sort of creates some faulty smoothing groups. And if you look at the eyes of the goose, you can see it is inquiring something. I am not sure what. But there you go, guys. A goose inside of CSGO made with the SDK Hammer source tool using only simple polygons. Thanks for watching, guys. Remember to support me on worldwideweb.patreon.com/tophatwaffle. Happy mapping.